Hello, my name is Jeffrey Lowe. I'm a doctoral management student at Colorado Technical University. For this video, we will be discussing a change process as part of our Unit 3 discussion board for the course of current topics in organizational development. The assignment was to select a change intervention process and identify it, when it should be used, why we selected it. The choice was to be made from the assigned reading, and I chose the Practicing Organizational Development, a Guide for Leading Change, 3rd edition by Rothwell, Stravos, Sullivan and Sullivan, 2010. Specifically from the book, I chose the New View and an Action Research Model, where it discusses the pre-launch, launch, and post-launch activities and conditions. And I will summarize their work as well as make some comments and ideas of my own. The first section here is the pre-launch, beginning with self-examination, examine personal disposition and decision-making, examine external environment, establish the need for change, and provide clarity of vision and direction. So the first part of the pre-launch was establishing the environment before a change must occur. Without it, a change is likely to fail. Essentially, you need to point out, as Burke 2002 indicates, that leaders need to know thyself, the old Socrates adage. Essentially, what you need to understand is your own tolerance for ambiguity, as in how much are you willing to move forward without having all the answers. You need to also understand your need for control. I mean, how much do you have to be the person grabbing things, directing, or can you let things flow on their own? This is really a personal style. You have to understand how feelings affect behavior. Change is a scary thing. So you have to know what to be looking for, not only in others, but in yourself. And also you have to take a look at your own decision-making processes, your values, and your motives for the change. You have to understand how you're going to react and how things need to be managed. Burke also suggests additional issues in pre-launch environment is knowing the external environment. What's going to cause the change, right? What's some possible crises or seizures to future opportunities? Next is establishing the need for change. The big thing here is that organizations now need to be innovative. They need to move. They need to be flexible. You have to make change a good thing, a desired thing, and something that is proactive, not simply waiting for a crisis that is just directing change, where everyone is being reactive and more scared and clamming up a bit. Providing clarity of vision and direction. So what's going to happen is that changes are going to disrupt the way of work. Your business needs to be one where it points, here's the general direction we're heading, here's the vision of the future, and how we're going to get there. But show that it's not a straight line. Things are going to move, and it's up from top to bottom, bottom to top, on how you're going to deal with these changes in the future, who should be recommending them, making them, how to plan and evaluate. When and why to use this is, in my belief, that the organization needs to be prepared. You need to be ready to enact change. You need to encourage changes to be recommended. You need to foster innovation, processes, technology, ideas. There's always new ways to do things. Don't be afraid to suggest stuff, and take it seriously when people make suggestions. Don't hand wave it. Take a look at them, evaluate them. Not everything's going to be selected, but at least let your people know that ideas are always being evaluated. And then back to being proactive as much as possible. If the organization is ready for change, it's going to be a lot more effective than simply just forcing it upon them. Change should be a good thing, not just simply a fire drill management of crisis. The second set is the launch. This is where we're going to discuss the initial activities and dealing with resistance to change. In the launch phase, this is really the beginning of the change effort. This is where communication is extremely key as to what's going on. We're shaking up the organization in some either minor or major way. Now, change needs to come from a credible source. It needs to come from the experts. It needs to come from the top of the organization. If a middle manager comes in and says, we're going to change the organization, it's like, well, what power do you have? How can I believe this? So there needs to be a champion, there needs to be a top-down activity. It is recommended that the organization holds an initial activity, some major event where you're going to fire up the imaginations, encourage enthusiasm, and really get everyone's attention as to what's going on and what's a good thing. Next is dealing with resistance. Resistance is going to happen. People are afraid of change because they don't know, as far as you don't know if you're going to have a job. How is your job going to change? How is your power base going to change? Who you're going to report to? There's a lot of unknown things that make people very uneasy. There's also the major challenge to a long-term intervention is to maintain communication with the change effort. According to Rothwell 2001, stakeholders must be reminded that of what is being changed, why it's changing, the change effort as it goes forward, and what are the benefits of the change that are going to come out. Once again, communication. This is the actual implementation phase. That's the launch. Communication was mentioned several times, and it cannot be stressed enough. You need to show that vision. You need to show the path, and you need to let people know exactly what's going to happen with them. Something else that I would add to this model that I've read in other works is that the organization must have a support structure for change and for worries and the psychological and emotional impacts this can have on its members. And as a manager and as a leader, be ready for resistance. Think ahead as we identified it in pre-launch. What could happen and plan for it. The last part we're going to discuss is the post-launch, where we need to be persistent, move people beyond their comfort levels, and manage avoidance mechanisms. The last part is the post-launch. This is what involves sustaining the change. You need to let people know that even though the change process may seem like it was spiraling out of control, you have to make sure that everyone knows what the success criteria was and how you measured against that. Be persistent about the change. Make sure that it is something that is lasting and was impactful, not a lot of effort for very little support, very little use going forward. Secondly, make people move beyond their comfort levels while minimizing stress. Expand people's capabilities. You need to get them out of their shell a little bit so that they can use the change. But going back to the pre-launch, it's all about making people ready for change and how to improve personal growth, organizational growth, and learning type activities. Third is be prepared to manage the predictable avoidance mechanisms, where people are during the change effort, they're blaming everyone else, they're scapegoating, they're doing all kinds of things that really don't help the change process. And you really need to make sure that you're helping to manage these activities. Changes can be minor or wide sweeping. At any level, they represent a disruption of the way things are done. Hopefully, change was implemented for the right reasons and was evaluated thoroughly prior to actually trying to implement. It wasn't knee-jerk, it wasn't what's currently going on as a fad, but it was something that would really help the organization, whether it was directed, innovative. There's a lot of reasons for change, but you got to make sure it was for the right things. Back to communication. I can't stress this enough. In every phase, it's always about communicating. Managers to workers, senior management, board members to everyone. You really have to make sure that everyone understands what's going on, how to plan for the future, how to be ready for change, implement it, what happened. The more people know about what's going on, it helps alleviate those fears to at least to some degree. Now, the model was identified as linear, which the authors had identified as kind of paradoxical, where a lot of them are sort of circular or spiral. It's not that change is a process where you have a start and an end. A specific change maybe, but the whole idea of change intervention is always it's going to be circular. You prepare, you go through it, you do your post activities, then you go back to prepare. You're going to constantly be going through these methods. I hope you enjoyed this discussion on a change intervention, and I look forward to seeing you in class.